Hello, dear Makita community. I warmly welcome you to this new ultimate comparison video. I finally managed to get my hands on all available Makita battery inflators, starting from the small 12-volt inflator to the large 40-volt machine. In today's video, we'll take a detailed look at each of these individual machines and, of course, compare them to each other to find out their advantages, disadvantages, and differences. Naturally, we'll also explore which inflator is suitable for whom. So let's not waste any time. As usual, if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the channel for free now and activate the bell to never miss a video in the future. You can find the current prices of these inflators to support this channel in the video description below. Many thanks for your support, and now let's get started after the intro. Finally, it's now laid out before us on the table. All currently available Makita battery inflators, starting here on the right side with the smallest 12-volt device, up to the large 40-volt monster, the MP001. I must say, I'm really excited that I can finally shoot an overview video of Makita's battery inflators for you. At this point, let me mention again briefly that some still seem to believe that the devices, as well as my opinion, were somehow sponsored. That is definitely not the case. All devices you see here, as well as in other videos, are 99.9% bought by myself, thanks to your support through both YouTube advertising and your purchases via the Amazon affiliate links in the video description. I'm incredibly grateful to you for that. And to get back to the topic, my opinion has not been influenced by any manufacturer. So far, so good. Definitely not sponsored for everyone who didn't know until now, and let's move on to the comparison. Let's start with a rough overview so we can see which inflators I have on the table. I must say I've organized the devices by voltage class, starting here on the left side with the smallest inflator, the 12-volt model from Makita, the MP100. Next, we have the two 18-volt devices. There are two of them, the DMP180 and the larger version, the DMP181. And on the far left, the largest model of the 40-volt class, the MP001. Upon first glance, one quickly notices that all inflators are indeed very, very similar. These two are almost identical, and the two smaller ones as well. The most significant distinguishing feature is actually the battery at the back of the machine. And it's through this that the inflators can be classified and categorized. Here we have the two 18-volt devices, the small 12-volt device, and on the far left, the large 40-volt inflator. Already at this point, we have the first criterion, or perhaps even the first exclusion criterion, depending on the system we're using, because we can exclusively use these specific batteries with the inflator. For the maximum runtime of all the inflators, it's definitely recommended to use larger batteries. As you can see, for the 12-volt variant, currently only the small 2 Ah battery is attached. Similarly, I can use the next larger 4 Ah battery here, or for the 40-volt model, instead of the 2.5 Ah, I can use the large 4 Ah battery. Also, due to the greater weight, I need a larger battery to have more capacity. Especially in comparison to the tiny 12-volt 2 Ah battery, the 40-volt battery with 4 Ah is significantly heavier, and for this reason, let's do a weight check. For a fair comparison, I exclusively use the solo machine, meaning the net weight without the battery. Let's start with the smallest device, the 12-volt inflator, the MP100. As you can see, the net weight is only 1,000 grams. This inflator is truly unbelievably small, light, and handy. Next, we have the two 18-volt models, starting with the small version, the DMP180. Let's see what it offers in terms of weight. And as we can see, this one also weighs only 1,000 grams, not necessarily heavier than the 12-volt version. And now the larger 18-volt, the DMP181. It already feels significantly heavier, and the scale confirms it. Here we have a weight of a proud 2,131 grams. Lastly, the 40-volt device, the MP001. Let's see what it weighs. And as we can see, here we have 2,180 grams, a few grams more than the 18-volt variant. But this weight also affects the handling. These two inflators, in terms of weight, are almost ridiculously light, easily carried with just a little finger. These two models already look different, especially the large 40-volt model, 2 kilograms net weight plus the large 4 ampere-hour battery. Then we're at a proud 3 kilograms. And I certainly don't want to carry that around with me all day unless the inflator is mostly used stationary. Then, of course, it's not a problem. In terms of ergonomics, I must say all inflators are initially very comfortable. The handles are perfectly sized, somewhat larger in these two models. But here in the handle area, we definitely have enough space, and in addition, all handles are exclusively rubberized, making them nicely non-slip. In terms of construction, all inflators are more or less identical. We always have the display on top, as well as small buttons for adjusting and reading the current pressure on the bottom or here on the handle. Then the trigger to activate the inflator, and on the side, always a small membrane switch for activation. It must be said that both these two inflators and the two smaller ones are rather identical, both in terms of the display and functionality. Let's start with the two smaller inflators. As you can see, they're completely identical in size and construction. We have the battery compartment on the back, the membrane button on the left side for activation, the trigger for triggering, and the displays on the top are one-to-one identical. And who would have thought? Similarly, the two larger models, in terms of size, are basically identical and also in terms of appearance or design. The biggest difference between these two inflators externally, it's mainly the XGT logo. We see the switch to activate on top here, the trigger below, both the same, and here is also a button for releasing compressed air, identical for both. Otherwise, both are more than similar. At least externally, because the internal features of these inflators are somewhat different. Since I won't be discussing each functionality again in this video, I refer you again to the separate individual videos. I've already introduced and tested each of these inflators separately. If you haven't seen these videos yet, check them out again. I'll link them up here on the info card or down in the video description. In terms of functionalities, we could say we essentially have two groups. That's one group, and this is another group, and we'll now briefly look at these differences. It must be said that those who want to get the maximum functionality must choose an inflator from these two, as here we have a feature that we did not have in these two inflators before. Some may already know what I mean, and it's about this small black button on both the DMP181 and the MP001, specifically for releasing compressed air. Now, if I have connected my inflator to my tire and notice on the display that there's too much pressure, I can easily reduce it using this small black button. This was not possible with these two models. Apart from that, all inflators have an automatic shutoff, so I can set the pressure to, for example, 3 bars, and as soon as the inflator detects that the 3 bars are reached, it automatically turns off. I've tested the accuracy of the display and the automatic shutoff of each inflator in a separate video. Speaking of the display, what can be said about it? As mentioned before, both these two inflators and these two inflators are completely identical in terms of display and construction. The only difference, these two displays have slightly more extensive functionality. Just like all inflators, we can easily set the pressure and choose between different units, namely bar, PSI, and kPa. Furthermore, in my opinion, these two displays are somewhat easier to read and provide more information. Moreover, these two inflators not only have one power level like these two colleagues, but here we can easily choose between 3 different speed levels. Visible on the front, all 4 models have a built-in LED, also completely identical for illuminating and searching for the valve in the dark. Right above, again identical for all, the included connectors and adapters. That means with each inflator you get the same set, starting with the air mattress adapter. Then we have the ball tip and, of course, not to be missed, the French valve adapter, or the connection for the Schrader valve is located at the bottom of the air hose on each inflator. And no, the 12-volt inflator doesn't lack adapters here either. They're located on the back. Moving down one level, specifically to the air hose, I must say that all inflators are almost identical. As you can see, right at the front, each has a nice plastic kink protection. Then comes the air hose. It's 65 centimeters long for each inflator, in my opinion completely sufficient. And as you can see, I've tried to stow the air hose as neatly as possible for each inflator. The advantage with these two models, they're sized in a way that we have 3 clamps here where we can easily stow the hose. With this one, we only have 2 clamps, so we have to wrap the hose around. And with the 12-volt inflator, we have only 1 clamp. So here, the hose situation is, in my opinion, the most precarious. As mentioned, each hose is 65 centimeters long, and right at the front is the car or Schrader valve, and here again, we can divide these two and these two inflators. The difference with these two inflators, we have a screw mechanism right at the front, and with these two, the typical clamp connector. It looks like this. What's the better choice? That's for everyone to decide, but for those who say, I prefer the typical clamp mechanism even with these two models, no problem, as there are suitable adapters for this too, also linked below in the video description. And of course, not to forget, on each inflator, the adapter for the Presta or bicycle valve. And now, before we switch to the test, to the most important part, namely the specifications. Here too, it must be said that these two and these two inflators can be categorized, as these two achieve a maximum pressure of 8.3 bar, and these two colleagues here achieve a maximum pressure of 11.1 bar. However, it looks a bit different with the air volume. It's structured as the inflators currently stand, starting with the small 12-volt inflator, the MP100D. This achieves an air volume of 10 liters per minute. Not overly impressive, but for a device of this size, in my opinion, sufficient. Next is the small 18-volt inflator, the DMP180, with an air volume of 12 liters per minute. And now the two larger devices, here the DMP181 with an air volume of 22 liters per minute, which is quite decent, and now the 40-volt device with 24 liters per minute. So you see, if you want to bring the tire to maximum pressure in the shortest time, you definitely have to go for the 40-volt inflator. But I believe even these 3 variants are completely sufficient. What do you think? Which inflator do you prefer? Maybe you have experiences. Feel free to write to me in the comments below, and with that, I would say let's jump into the practical test now to see if the difference is really as significant as thought or not. So get ready, let's start with the practical test. And now let's dive straight into the short comparison test of these 4 Makita cordless inflators. Here, briefly shown again the individual devices. I'm really curious to see how big the difference will be in today's test. Furthermore, the test objects are shown here, and for the test, I'm using 2 car tires, which are completely deflated. Furthermore, very important, I've already tested all 4 inflators separately regarding accuracy. At this point, I'd like to briefly refer to the respective individual videos. And of course, very important, the batteries. For the 40-volt device, I'm using a large 4 ampere-hour battery. For the two 18-volt devices, I have 2 large 5 ampere-hour batteries, which are also freshly charged. And for the small 12-volt inflator, I'm using a 12-volt battery with 4 ampere-hours. And also extremely important, the preset pressure on all inflators is set to 2 bars. And of course, all devices are in the highest power level. And now, straight into the test. Top left is the 18-volt or 40-volt, and bottom right is the small 12-volt and the DMP180. And as evident, at 1 minute and 30 seconds, the MP001 has already given up. Shortly after, around 1 minute and 55 seconds, the DMP181. Now in the race are the 2 smaller devices, DMP180 and the MP100. And that's it, 2 minutes 30 for the DMP180, only the MP100D is still in the race. And as you can see, even after 3 minutes, it's been able to bring the tire to 2 bars. And basically, that's all wrapped up, and I would say let's go briefly to the concluding summary. because the differences between these four inflators were quite noticeable, especially with the two larger devices, the MP001 compared to the DMP181. I was quite surprised that they were approximately 25 to 30 seconds apart. After about another 30 seconds, the other 18-volt version followed, namely the smaller DMP180. And after a proud 3 minutes, the 12-volt inflator also managed to bring the tire to a pressure of 2 bars. Regarding the resulting vibration in the handle area, honestly, I couldn't find a significant difference between these devices, so for me, they were all approximately identical in this regard. In terms of runtime, clearly at the top, the 40-volt device with the large 144 watt-hours, shortly after, the 18-volt devices with either 5 or 6 ampere-hours, also entirely sufficient in terms of endurance. And in my opinion, even the 12-volt device with the large 4 ampere-hour battery had enough power here to easily inflate several tires. However, when it comes to comfort or settings, the two larger models definitely have the upper hand because the display is much more readable and we have 3 available levels with these two devices, and of course, significantly more power. So inflating a tire is relatively quick compared to the two smaller models. So far, so good. I'm now eagerly interested in which of these 4 cordless inflators you would choose and why. Please feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. I'm curious. And with that, I would say that's it again with this short comparison test. If you liked it, I'd appreciate it with a hearty thumbs up. And if not done yet, then of course, subscribe to the channel quickly and activate the bell to not miss any new videos in the future. You can find the current prices, as usual, in the video description below. Thank you very much for your support. Stay healthy and see you next time. Until then, goodbye.